The Caribbean is once again in the line of fire. And no, we're not talking about tourists mixing up sunscreen with hot sauce. Things are far more serious this time. Moscow and Havana have officially signed a military agreement. On October 8, 2025, the Russian Federation Council approved it. In 10 days, the pact comes into force, for 5 years, automatically renewable. Like a marriage contract, except with missiles. If earlier the tone was, let's be friends, now it's, let's be friends with air defense systems and hypersonic weapons. Russia gains the right to place military facilities just 150 kilometers off the coast of Florida. Americans, better prepare your donuts and valerian. The Russians are back in Cuba, from consultations to real action. Deputy Chairman of the Defense Committee, Viktor Bondarev, made it clear this isn't about talks or exercises. It's strategic coordination. What used to be polite diplomatic tea-time conversations is now turning into infrastructure construction with very real intentions. Moscow insists this is about strengthening peace and stability. Well, sure, when missiles stare at each other across the ocean, the world certainly freezes in terror. In Washington, the reaction is predictable, deeply concerned. Old maps from the Cuban Missile Crisis are out again. As officials scramble to remember where Cuba actually is, military analyst Viktor Baranets suggests that a new missile system called Oreshnik, hazelnut, might appear in Cuba, with a range of 5,500 kilometers. Enough to cover the entire U.S. East Coast from Miami to New York. The first operational Oreshnik system is already in service. The name may sound harmless, like a dessert for coffee, but it's an argument strong enough to make even NATO nervously change the subject. At this stage, it's no longer about technology, it's about political will, whether you want it or not. The message is clear. Russia is positioning this as a response to Western actions. The agreement's wording is so broad that you could fit almost anything into it, except, perhaps, a trampoline park. Analyst Alexander Stepanov from the Institute of Latin America calls it globalization of military potential. It almost sounds like a business strategy, expanding a brand into new markets. Except this brand is hypersonic and there are no returns. For Washington, this is a blow to the nerves. The U.S. has long assumed its sphere of influence ends somewhere around the Panama Canal. Now, surprise, Moscow returns not as a tourist with souvenirs, but as a player with a suitcase full of missiles. If Americans once said, the Russians are coming, now they add, and they're headed straight for Havana. Cuba, unlike some wavering post-Soviet friends, has picked its side and holds it firmly. No half measures, no we're for peace but against sanctions. Havana understands that Russia isn't just a partner, it's a strategic shield. That's why Moscow is ready to invest, build, train, and supply. Even the old Radio Intelligence Center may be revived, breathing new life into the good old eavesdropping traditions. According to some reports, up to 25,000 Cuban volunteers are ready to join the Russian army. That's not symbolic support, that's an entire army corps with a Caribbean accent. Officially, Havana shrugs. We have nothing to do with it. Yet the doors remain open. Anyone can sign a legal contract to work in Russia. Technically, it's just employment. With elements of hypersonic involvement, Moscow will have to train them in technology, tactics, and probably the meaning of the word order in Russian. But Russia has experience in Syria, in Africa, in Libya. The main thing is motivation. Money, citizenship, social guarantees, and a touch of military romance. And Cuba isn't alone. Venezuela, Nicaragua, Bolivia all wave enthusiastically from across the ocean. Venezuela says, we're with you, and by the way, we've got oil, might come in handy. Nicaragua continues its anti-Western course with admirable persistence. Bolivia, though landlocked, has ambitions. Russia is building an entire network of allies across the continent, a kind of geopolitical Wi-Fi with expanding coverage. In Washington, it feels like déjà vu. The Monroe Doctrine, America for Americans, and proclaimed back in the 19th century, is cracking once again. Russia's reply? Cuba for us. The Pentagon must now remember that the Caribbean Sea is more than a pretty spot on the map. They'll have to strengthen air defenses, spend money, and divide their focus between Europe, Asia, and now Latin America. That's exactly what Moscow wants, to make its adversary play on several chessboards at once. And the more boards there are, the higher the chance of confusion. The deployment of Oreshnik missiles isn't just symbolism, it's a shift in balance. The flight time to U.S. territory would be just minutes. Air defense systems are unprepared. It's not a threat, but a reminder. The ocean is no longer a guarantee of safety. Unlike 1962, there are no leaders today who could simply pick up the phone and say, "Enough. Take down the missiles." Now, everything depends on technology and reaction speed. And with hypersonic weapons, a single operator's mistake or wrong signal could turn human history into the past tense. Russia and Cuba are together again, not under Marxist slogans, but with clear calculation and hypersonic arguments. Washington is alarmed, Brussels is deeply concerned, and China watches with quiet interest as old players redraw the map once more. The world has become more complex, borders more fluid and missiles much faster. Cuba is back at the center of the great game. And this time, it's not rum in the glasses. But politics served on ice. The Caribbean returns to the headlines, not with a weather forecast, but with a forecast of global cooling. Want peace? Prepare the Oreschnik. And for those who still don't get it, welcome to the new season of an old series, The Cold War, rebooted.